All right, guys, we are back answering your questions. So I'm answering the questions you guys left on the community tab. And this one is from Rexus Trap Type Beats. He says, teach us how to sound design and make our own 808s from scratch. So this video, I'll show you guys quickly how to sound design 808s. So really 808s comes down to the processing you use. It's not really just the sound design of the 808. But let's go into Serum, for example. Serum is the best tool I found for sound design, period. So what is an 808? It's a sine wave that we add curvature to. Now, most people just, I'll just kind of do stuff. Okay, let's add this in. So what I like to do is go in the channel rack and add 4 little placements so that when I'm shaping the sound, I don't have to keep going back and forth playing notes. So the first thing we have to do is give it a shape. Okay, so as you guys know, real 808s, if you reference these, if you guys need some references, go to busyworksbeats.com/blueprint, because in here, I have like a lot of 808s, okay? And if you look at the 808, let's open up an 808 real quick. Let's open up in a new channel. Let's just look at what an 808 does. Okay, so firstly, it starts up high and then it goes down low over time. This is called the decay, how it fades over time. Now, whenever you see these lines that are closer together, this represents a faster pitch. Pitch is basically how fast the sound is. So anytime you see frequencies really fast next to each other, that means it's a higher pitch. And when the sound is more spread apart, that's a slower pitch. So we know that this sound is starting with a higher pitch and then it goes to a lower pitch over time. Now the question is, how do we create this curvature to where it goes up and then down? It kind of like stays there for a while and then it comes down. That's called the hold parameter. So basically when this 808 hits, it has a curvature going up. So that's the attack. And then we have what's called the hold parameter, which a lot of people skip over this part. This is the hold parameter. It holds it at its peak value for however long. And then it slowly starts to fade depending on our curvature. Now, most people think decay curvature is a concave curvature. You can actually have a decay curvature that's more convex. So this is an 808 that's more convex. If I were to fade this, it would become more concave. This is a concave curvature, more inward. Whereas convex is, I don't know if we can go all the way back to those edits, but a more convex curvature, let me just drag it back in, is more of like a big belly on a man. That's a convex curvature. Okay, whereas a concave curvature is a more slim man, metaphorically speaking. All right, so that's gonna sound like this. Very short, like a kick, and this is how we start to shape different kicks. Okay, so now we understand the properties of an 808. We also have to think about the harmonic content of an 808. So if I load this 808 into a Wave Candy plugin. This is a really, really useful plugin for understanding sound design. So it's free in FL, probably one of the most slept on plugins in all of FL. Let's right click, go to spectrum mode. We're going to turn the bands on the highest resolution here and then turn the scale up. This basically allows you to see lower frequencies more clearly. So as we play the 808 that we just loaded, basically what we're measuring here is how many harmonics are in the sound. Let me load up my MIDI controller. Sorry, y'all. Turn a lot of stuff off. Okay. So as I hit this 808, we can see there's a horizontal line here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It goes all the way up to 2K. So that means this 808 has a lot of harmonic distortion. If I run the same serum through the same exact spectrum and okay, it only has one horizontal line. This is called the fundamental frequency. So then we can start to mirror some things about the first 808. So as you guys can see, this horizontal line is way higher than the other horizontal line. That means I need to lower the octave of my 808. Okay, so let's go to the serum. Let me make this screen smaller. So let's go to serum and let's lower the octave about 2 octaves. So now I'm sitting around that 50 hertz range. Now as a reference, we're gonna play the, now here's another trick. What I like to do is if I'm trying to like create a similar 808, I'll play one of our tone and then one of the other tone. Now this doesn't have an envelope here, so I'm just gonna arbitrarily give it a decay curvature so it doesn't overlap the other sound here. So now I'm trying to mirror, does our 808 hit at the same exact fundamental frequency? Because that is 90% of the sound having the right fundamental frequency. So theirs goes all the way down to about 43 hertz. So we're not there yet. So let's go to the semitone value and pull this down. So this is coarse pitch or octave pitch is a very strong turning of the pitch. Semitone is a lesser strong, and then fine tune is like microscopic. So let's pull the semitone value down until we get to a similar frequency. So we're still, it's hard to really see. So our frequency is sitting at 53, so we're still off by about 7 hertz. So now we're closer. Okay, so we had to go down 7 semitones to match what's called the fundamental frequency, because now we can add what are called harmonics to the sound. Harmonics are multiples of the fundamental frequency. So the fundamental frequency is the lowest sound a sound makes. It's a sine wave. And essentially every waveform is really just stacked up sine waves. Every single waveform is a sine wave at the core. Okay. So here we have 44 hertz or so. So the second harmonic would be 44 times 2. And the third harmonic would be 44 times 3. And on and on and on. So that's how we measure what are called harmonics of a sound. Okay, so a sound is not just one frequency, it's multiple. Okay, so here to edit the harmonics of the sound, we're not going to run it through saturation and do all this stuff. We're going to edit the wavetable, and we're actually going to go to what are called partials. These represent the harmonics. So if I add the second harmonic, our 808 will now have a second line here. Okay, so it's not just one frequency anymore. Now we're creating 2 frequencies. So here's before, and then here's after. So now we have 2 lines. And if I add the third harmonic, we're going to have 3 lines because we're adding more and more frequencies. Okay, 4 lines and so and so. Okay, so now we're starting to shape the tone via the harmonics of the 808. So most people forget that they need, for tonality in your 808, you need to actually add harmonic content. There's many ways to do it. You could just draw it in with partials. You can distort the 808. You can saturate it. All right, so that's what an 808 is built up off. I said that, whatever the proper English is. That's how an 808 is built. Okay, so now we understand the key properties of the 808. Let's start sculpting our 808. So as a refresher, all we've done so far is loaded up a sine wave, and we pulled down the pitch so that we start at the same frequency. Okay, and then we added a decay curvature, but that was really just for demonstration purposes. So let's pull that back. So right now it's just a sustaining sine wave. It's not doing anything. So we need to go to envelope 1. This controls the amplitude of the sound. Let's pull down the sustain. And now we're creating curvature, or a fade in volume of our 808. Now, another great way to monitor what the 808 actually looks like is not just wave candy. It's to open up Edison, because you can actually see the waveform, and you can start to measure how similar it looks to another 808. So this is another great way to kind of see what you're doing. Let's record into Edison, and running out of screen room here. So basically we have 3 plugins going on. I don't know if we'll have enough room for this one. Unfortunately, let's close the browser. We're just going to close Wave Candy for now. All right, so now we have Edison and we have Serum, and we're telling the sound to decay in curvature. So remember, I told you guys, what creates the 808? It went up in attack. So we're going to give it a little attack time so it prevents clicks. And then it stayed at the peak volume for a little bit. So let's increase what's called the hold parameter. This is the part that people skip. The hold parameter is what gives that like perceived punch sometimes to an 808. Okay, so the hold parameter, we're going to have that last for 60 milliseconds. Now, I want to quickly go back real quick to the other 808 to show you guys how fast sound moves. So over here, we're going to right click and we're going to go to minute, second, millisecond. Okay, so right click here, go to minute, second, millisecond. And we're going to highlight the entire 808. Now, the entire 808 says that the 808 lasts 1 second and 600 milliseconds. If I'm doing this, reading that properly. So hopefully I'm reading this properly. Minute, second, and then millisecond. So we're not. Does that feel right? So so it's saying 685 milliseconds from what I'm understanding, and maybe 1 second. Okay, that makes sense. So this sound lasts for 1 second and 685 milliseconds. So if I go further, it should say 2. So this should be a 2-second sound here. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Okay, about 2 seconds. Okay, so just to show you guys how fast 40 milliseconds is, because a lot of people think 40 milliseconds is a long time. It's not. So if I pull this back, let's measure how fast this section from here to here is. So just this whole section right here, the hold area, is 43 milliseconds. Okay, this small little piece of the 808 is 43 milliseconds. Now, for the average person who doesn't know the scale of milliseconds, you would assume 43 is like this long, but it's not. So that's why I love Edison, because it gives us precise value. So about 30 to 40 milliseconds can be used for our hold parameter. okay, without it even being truly noticeable. So we have an attack time that just turns up the 808. We're holding the volume at the top, and now we're giving it a decay curvature. Now this 808 that we're modeling does not have a concave curvature. It has a convex curvature, more like a big belly man, okay? So by default, Serum actually curves it in what we call concave curvature. Okay, so let's make this more convex, and this gives more body to the 808. So it doesn't fade down so fast. It kind of takes a while to fade down. And now we need to just lower sustain. Sustain is just, if we hold a note, it will just hold that volume. We don't need sustain for this 808, so let's turn it off. And let's hear what we have so far. Now, because we are making a pretty long 808, we're going to start spreading out these notes. Okay, and we're going to record into Edison so that we can see visually what's actually happening. So let's check the shape of this 808. Let's record on input. All right, so here's what our 808 looks like so far. Let's normalize this just for the video's sake. I would not normalize 808s unless you guys know what you're doing. So far we created an 808 that looks like a shark a tooth, okay? So we need to adjust some parameters here. So firstly, we need to make the hold value come down to the decay value a sharper curvature, because right now it's just this long tooth looking like shape. We need this to actually be a little more shapely here. Okay, somewhere around here we need to cut the volume down. So we're going to edit that shape in real time. Now the attack time looks pretty safe here, and that should, and then we basically just need to lower the decay curvature a little bit. So let's go back to our curvature and let's just pull this down a little bit more. Now we still have to add the knock to the 808. So knock is not only just the hold parameter, but it is a big part of the knock. So now we're changing the shape in real time. Let's go back to this 808 and fix this curvature here from the decay curvature, or from the hold parameter to the decay curvature. I know you guys can't see the screen, but I'm basically just lowering the curvature to more concave curvature. And we can also use sustain and release, which may have been used in their sound design to create that like up, go up, hold, down. Like that down volume could be a sustain volume. That might not be the decay curvature. So we're just kind of reverse engineering. All right, so let's look at the 808 now. It still looks like a shark fin. It's very just linear in the way it decays. Okay, so we still have to add one more parameter, which is pitch modulation. But that shouldn't change the shape of the 808. So we're just trying to get the shape right. So it goes up, it holds at the max volume, it comes down a little bit, and then it fades down. So a decent enough 808, but we could do better in terms of matching the shape of that 808 that we were referencing. So there's a lot of reasons that 808 we were referencing could look like that. And that's where post-processing comes into play. But we're not going to complicate this video. Okay, now that you guys understand that, now let's add, now before we get into pitch tuning, let's add harmonics, okay, for more tone. So that people can hear it on different systems here. So we're going to add the second harmonic. This is really the key one for making the 808 heard, is that second and third harmonic. Okay, so we didn't add any saturation. Let's go back to the main and turn this up so we could actually hear. And as you hear, the 808's just like, there's no like boom to it. Okay, so we could either change the curvature, which I don't think we should do because we're losing some of the body of the 808. We need to change either the hold parameter, so let's turn this up, or we need to actually add the pitch modulation. So here's where pitch modulation comes into play. It can get weird because you have to do it by ear. And that's why I started you guys off on the right hertz. At least we know where we're trying to land. So now we're going to go to envelope 2 and give it this a decay curvature, turn down sustain. We're going to drag it over top of the coarse pitch. So now it goes whew, like that. If I open up the spectrum, you guys can see really, truly what makes a kick in an 808 punch is the frequency changes very fast. You just can't perceive it. All right, so let's move this to the left here. Make sure you guys could actually see all this. Okay, the screen is a little crowded. So what we're going to do, though, is lower the decay curvature of the 808. So it doesn't go whew, it's going to go whew very fast. To where it's almost undetectable. But we're still at 400 milliseconds of of decay, which is pretty long. All right, so now the reason we can't hear it is because once we add an envelope to the coarse pitch, it doesn't land unless we go to the matrix and set it to one directional. By default, it's set to bipolar mode, which means it will go even further than where we were. But if we set this to unipolar, we can basically set our frequency to be the landing point, and then wherever this envelope goes to a max value, I know this gets convoluted, wherever this envelope tells the coarse pitch max value, we're saying how high of a range do we want the pitch to start, and we're going to define the ending by putting the pitch here. Now, if you have it on bipolar mode, it disregards where we actually, like the frequency here, disregards that, and it goes lower than that point. So that's why when people are sound designing 808s, they either do it by ear or they tell this mode to be unipolar. Now you get a different sound. Okay, so just want to give you guys the real. My bad, y'all, I had to clear my throat. So now we are getting the concept of the 808. Now we need to fine tune its actual sound. Okay, so if it's too high pitched, for example, we could start lowering the partials. I wouldn't mess with phase, which is this bottom area. This is the phase of each pitch. We don't need to mess with that because that will cause wobbling in the bass most of the time. All right, so now we have the 808. Now we have to ask which characteristics of the 808 do we need? We need more harmonics. The other 808 that we were referencing had much more energy. So here's where we get into the effects. And here's where you gotta use your ear. Now too, also, we can lower the decay curvature, but that will take away some of the body of the 808. So let's up the decay curvature and make a long 808. I recommend you guys start with longer 808s, not shorter 808s. Shorter 808s are harder to, like when people use them, when you go up in pitch, they're very short. It goes, but when you use long 808s, when you create long 808s, you go up in pitch and it's like, it takes longer to decay because you made a longer sample. And you can always shorten a long sample. You can't do the opposite. So I found it more prudent to give people longer 808s. Okay, so now our problem is more harmonics. So we can either draw in the harmonics manually or we can use effects. So chances are we're going to use effects here. Let's go to the effects tab. Now under warp, we can just kind of quick access some effects. Some effects you guys want to mess with are frequency modulation, not for every 808. I'm just going to move quicker through this because this is a lot to explain here. But we're going to use oscillator B. We're going to turn the level down and we're going to say FM from B. And now we're adding harmonics to the sound, okay, without really turning it into a different waveform. So it still has this smooth kind of sine wave sound. And it has more tone to it. Okay, so now we just need volume on this 808. And now let's visually see what the 808 looks like. Let's record it in to Edison. Okay, we still need a little bit of curvature. So I think the way they created curvature before is to use their sustain value. So let's normalize this just so we can see. So the 808 starts high, goes low. So it's not much curvature to it, okay? So really what creates punch is to have some kind of curvature in at least the beginning to create a transient. But for 808s, we're not always trying to make it compete with a kick, okay? So there's a fine line of trying to be a kick with the punch and also trying to be a bass. So there's like a middle ground. And if you push the 808 into being too much of a kick, it's hard to go up in pitch and down in pitch. That's why you might find that some 808s you just play one note, other 808s you play multiple notes. So this is more of a tonal 808. And also too, you want to check the octaves. All right, so let's mess with the FM just to get more harmonics out of it. I don't know why my serum's like glitching here. What's going on? All right, so my screen was glitching there. So again, we don't have to use FM from B. We could also use different distortion techniques. So firstly, let's go to distortion. Let's go to tube mode. So this is going to add a very specific amount of harmonics to the sound. There's no way to measure it outside of using this plugin Wave Candy. So as I crank this up, you guys can hear that bitey tone. Okay, so just depending on the style of 808 you guys want, you could try these saturation tools. Also keep in mind at this point, I usually go into third-party plugins. I don't really mess with the internal Serum plugins or effects. But these are all going to give us different levels of harmonics. We can also filter this if you have too many harmonics. Now, I think tube saturation is probably the best for this sound. But let's say we went to hard clip and this is too bright of a sound. We can add the oscillator through a filter, send it through a filter. Oscillator A goes through this low pass filter. And we can kind of chisel out the frequencies that way. And mess with the drive signal as well to add some additional harmonics. So again, there's usually, a sweet spot for the plugin. We don't want to cut too many high frequencies because that's how we perceive the harmonics. So let's go back to so our ear is starting to hear that pitch dive. So it might be more prudent to lower the pitch range because it's like, you can hear the lasery part of it. Either that or we need to lower the decay curvature. So it's not as like, so we want to get rid of this lasery kind of tone. Usually a faster decay does that, or we could just pull in the range. Notice if I go higher, it becomes more transient, but also more lasery sounding. And we don't want the 808 to always have a kick inside of it. So you got to be careful with that transient. So there's different ways to add different tones to your 808s. Let's also go back and take out some of these harmonics. See if we get a different stack. So now we can shape it based off of the harmonic content. Like that tone. I think we found pretty good 808. Let's record this into Edison. Now it still needs processing, so let's record this in. Now certain notes just hit harder than other notes. So this note hit harder on G in this case. So I know a lot of people want 808s tuned to middle C, but sometimes middle C is not the perfect tuning in my opinion for 808s. For your guys' specific 808s. Let's fade out the end here. For this one, let's normalize it. And what we need to do is actually print this or drag it into the channel rack so that we could use it as a one-shot, because now it will be a whole different beast when we reprocess this through stuff. So now, again, the quick thing to do is to test this as if you would any other 808 and test different things like pre-computed effects. And just, oh wait, I think we're running through the same. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to shape this 808 using my ear and my sound design skills here. So what I want from this 808 is more high frequencies. So firstly, let's open up some kind of EQ. And I'm just going to boost the harmonics that are already there. Okay, and then we're going to run it into a soft clipper of some sort. In this case, I'm using a plugin called Gold Clip. You don't need this plugin specifically. There are tons of saturators like Fruity Blood Overdrive, Fruity Fast Distort, even the saturation mode of Fruity Limiter. But this I like because we can get different tones out the 808. Okay, and we always want to A/B to see if it's really doing anything. That one just handles some of the transient information. That one doesn't go crazy. Now we're going to load up Fruity Limiter, and we're going to add more transient information to it. This is why I said it's a lot of post-processing to make an 808 do. Like, for example, this 808, it has this point to it. So we're going to use an expander to boost the volume. Okay. So basically in Fruity Limiter, we're going to turn the limiter ceiling up and the threshold down. And we're going to turn the, I feel like something happened to That's not our 808. Hold on. There we go. All right, so let's go back into Fruity Limiter. And we're going to go to the threshold, turn that down, and then we're going to turn the ratio to the left. This is upward expansion. We're going to up the sustain too. So if you get any jitter in the volume increase, just turn this up. We're going to lower the release time to a very fast amount, like 43 milliseconds. And then we're going to make sure the threshold doesn't grab onto the entire sound here. So it's a very short volume bump. It's very indistinguishable. I'm even going to lower the release because I think threshold's too low. Okay, so this is, you guys can't see it on the screen, but it's boosting just a small amount. I think that'll be good for this 808. So almost indetectable, but what it's doing is adding more pointiness to the 808. If we want a dramatic pointiness, we can turn this ratio further and further to the left. And now that curvature becomes sharper. Now you guys can visually see where I'm adding that transient. Let's just lower the release time so it doesn't. So depending on how hard we hit the 808, it triggers a different threshold. So what we need to do is go into the channel rack and just have it figure out the threshold here. So all we're doing, just in layman's terms, is boosting the beginning portion, the sharpness of the 808. All right, so that helps with some punch. It's not crazy amount. All right, not a crazy amount. Now we can also use something like a transient designer. What transient designers do, they basically reshape the extension of a peak of a sound. So they're not boosting the volume. They're just, if you want a longer, like for example, if you want, where is it at here? My brain can't do two things at once. So this is the SPL Transient Designer. FL Studio also has one called like Transient Processor or something like that. So the Transient Designer, basically, if we add more sustain, it's taking the peak volume and it's turning up the volume longer for us using the sample. It's not boosting it past wherever the peak was. The attack time is the opposite. It turns down the volume beyond a certain point. Okay, so that's how we kind of create more perception of a punch. So hopefully we can visualize this in Edison here. So let's keep recording into. So Edison's a really good tool to just see what kind of shapes we're creating. So now let's increase the attack time. And as you guys can see, we're adding like this little pointy thing to the 808. So it's basically just turning down the volume. Okay, and then we could lower the sustain. But this is messing with the curvature of our 808, so I wouldn't recommend doing this. I'm just showing you guys what it's doing to the sound. And now let's A/B it to see if did it do anything to the sound. I feel like for this 808, it didn't add anything to do that Transient Designer, so that's why I wanted to try it in real time. But that's at least what it does, is make that 808 a little pointier at the beginning. Now this didn't really have much pitch envelope information to even exaggerate with the transient. And the 808's missing a little bit of that like bottom end sub. So here's where I might combine this 808 with the kick that we designed for more of a transient approach. So this is why I said this gets very convoluted very fast. Why is this glitching again? Hold up, y'all. FL Studio is just glitchy. Let's do this, close Windows, open it back up. All right, I don't know why it's not letting me click. Okay, so that's an FL glitch. I don't know, FL's just glitchy. Okay, now let's go back to the channel rack. And what we need to do here is, for a kick, I'm just gonna move a little bit quicker here. We're gonna raise the tuning here. And we're gonna turn off soft clip mode. We're gonna go to the harmonics, turn these down. We're gonna go back to the envelope here. We're gonna make this decay curvature way faster. And why is it still distorting? Oh, we're going through the same channel. That's why. Okay. So now we got to figure out how to get the tuning right. So let's lower this octave. Let's turn this up. So this is what separates a kick from an 808. Let's lower the hold parameter. Now the sound just needs more volume and more distortion. So one way to add distortion is to send it through a filter and use the drive. This is a great way to add more density to a sound. And again, we need to go back to our matrix here to determine the amount of pitch dive we have. And then we can add some saturation. I wouldn't add too much saturation on the kick. Let's lower the decay curvature. And then 2, we could just get the tuning right. So we don't need to EQ anything. We just need to make sure all this stuff pretty decent kick. So let's record that into Edison. Let's record. I like to record on play because it gives you a little time marker. So that's how you can create a kick. We're kind of, again, simplifying all this stuff just to move through this tutorial, but you want to take your time with the tone. So if we look at the kick, you know, it's partially rounded here. It's not completely squared off. It's still rounded. So we could technically push this harder through a saturator of some sort to give it more of a squared off top. So let's combine this with the 808. And now I'm going to mix this like I would any other song. Now another way to kind of mix these two is add a little time delay. So let's add a little time shift between the kick and the 808, just so it gives time for the kick to hit. So I'm going to just show you guys plugins I would use. Standard Clip is a really good plugin, super slept on. For adding this kind of bite to a kick, let's switch it to Soft Clip Pro and mess with the saturator. Now in this case, it just doesn't really do much because we already designed the sound to be what it's going to be. So in that case, that doesn't really fit the vibe. Let's add Gold Clip. This will be a little less dramatic. Okay, so we get a bit of a cleaner clipping. And I'm going to unlink these and just turn up the output volume. And we can also look at the actual EQ to see where does this kick hit. So this hits way down to 45 hertz, 50 hertz. I'm going to boost this up with the tuner. Try to hit it around 60 hertz. I've noticed 60 hertz hits a little bit different than anything else. So let's see here. We need to change the range. So it's still hitting at 52. So we need to be more, we need to go in a higher range here. Let's see how far we can pitch this kick. So now we're sitting around 68. So I just missed by a couple hairs here. All right, so now we have the kick we need. Now from here, we can shape it more with a low pass filter so that we can take the harmonics of the 808 and only the punch of the kick. And now we can also go back to this 808 and just reshape it. So here's where, you know, this is where sound design becomes a whole thing. And let's also combine these two. To try to process these with the same processor. All right, so let's make sure the kick hits as hard as we need it to hit. So I think we could push this a little bit harder. Let's run it through an air soft clipper. This is probably one of the most aggressive soft clippers I've used. Very aggressive. And then let's open the 808. So let's, again, here's where we got to really start doing stuff. Let's shape the 808. Add a time delay. You can boost the 808. Now the nature of this 808 is very tonal, so we can either cut back on the harmonics with an EQ, or we have to go back to the drawing board with the harmonics. But for this, we'll just use an EQ to measure the harmonics, to reduce the harmonics. And again, another technique I like to do is just see what the waveform is doing. It tells you a lot of information. Okay, so we can see there's a little bit of a phase issue. So that's what's causing this kind of weird sound. So with the kick, it's clashing with the 808. That's why it creates this weird distortion here. That's why I tried to create a time difference between the 808 and the kick. So we're losing a lot of impact because the kick is fighting with the 808. So another way to do this, let's find the kick. We're going to sidechain the 808. We're going to move a little bit quicker because this is advanced. And we're going to use a multi-band compressor. We're going to go to the settings here. We're going to go to processing, right click, select your kick input. We're going to go here to the expert mode and make sure we go to external input as the sidechain trigger. And we only really need to target the middle frequencies. We're going to put the look ahead on. And basically we want a fast attack, fast release. So every time the kick hits, it will lower the 808 in this range, in the clashing range, which is that 60 hertz area. So this should correct. Now I'm going to exaggerate the release. All right, now let's go back and measure what the kick and the 808 look like. So we still get that phasing issue. So let's turn off the 808 and see what the kick even looks like by itself. So the kick looks fine. All right, so it's the 808. Now another way to do this is just turn down the 808, but as you guys can see, it creates a weird transient to body difference. So we don't want that normally speaking. So let's start lowering the transient, which is the kick. I think we just pushed the 808 too far with saturation. Let's take off some of these saturation points. All right, so it was just really, I just pushed the 808 too far. All right, so now we're getting more of a realistic shape. All right, let's zoom in. So this is why I said it's a lot faster when you look at the waveform. Again, we're getting this distortion though, which means, again, it's a phasing issue, a timing issue. And because the 808 and the kick are in the same, they're fighting for the same space. So let's go further with this multi-band compressor. And let's make the range further so that they clash less. So we only need this release time to be the length of that weird shape that we saw. And let me make sure this is on the right channel. All right, so let's go back to Edison, to the drawing board. Let's record this in. Still some wobble here. So let's keep increasing this release time and see until we see less wobble of the 808. All right, so we still see wobble. So this is one of those really tricky things. Now, another way we could do this is technically we could cut the lows of the kick so they don't clash, because this kick is way down there, 60. Let's see where this 808 is down near. Maybe the 808 is too low. Let's turn up, let's fade the 808 up. There we go. I didn't realize the 808 was that low tuned. Okay, so I'm glad we saw that. So now they're gonna clash less. Okay, there we go. It was a tuning thing. That's why I said there's so many things we gotta think about with this kick and 808 combined. So now we should have less issues. I can audibly hear we have less clashing. Okay, so now I can go back to the actual multi-band and turn down the release. And then again, here's where you start to level the body of the 808 with the transient. So I think the 808 itself is this pointy. And again, here's where a soft clipper helps because you could shave off the peaks. So a better tone. I think the 808 just isn't long enough. Let's go down an octave. This is why I said you can sound design. It's better to sound design a long 808 than a short one. And here's the exact reason. It's because, oh, I forgot we have a fade out parameter too, so we can mess with that. All right, so I don't have to mess with the pitch. I forgot we had a fade out on it. So now I'm looking at timing and the curvature of the 808. So let's go back to Edison. So as you guys can see, it takes a lot of time to make one drum. So now we have a more suitable 808. There we go. So now our 808s coming to fruition here. And let's lower the fade outs a little bit. Actually, like the fade, just not a fan of the curvature. So the curvature we can fix with a compressor. Let's use a free compressor here for now. So in sound design, we use compression a lot. So when people tell you not to compress 808s, just don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. All right, let's lower the threshold. Now I hear the compression. I'm not seeing the compression. So I want to make sure we are looking at the right Edison here. Okay, so we were looking at the wrong Edison. Okay, that's why. Okay, let's record. I don't know why FL is like glitching with the menus. What's going on with FL? All right, so let's go back to Edison. We were looking at the wrong one. So we were looking at the 808 itself. So now I'm adding a compressor to change this kind of big body 808. Let me show you guys what I mean. Let's record. So here's before compression, this 808 shape. And before we combine it with the kick, and here's after compression. So we're taking out the convex curvature of the 808, depending on the threshold we use here. And also, so the threshold has to be in the right area to not make the transient too pointy. All right, so I'm also going to run the compressor before the saturator because that should help us with the level a little bit and the transient material. So I'm going to purposely turn this up so we can hit the clipper harder. So we're basically taking off this pointiness and squaring off the sound a little bit more. Okay, so that's like exaggerated. That's like a decap 808, super pushed. Let's pull it back somewhere in between. And let's add a little feedback. It's gonna add some harmonics to the sound. Get that sound there. So I feel like the 808 could be longer. Let's hope that we have more. See how the 808 just stops? It's like, and then it stops. That's why you want to sound design long 808s. So we should have sound designed a longer 808. Hopefully I have the serum patch. I think I messed with it. But that's why you guys want to sound design long 808s. So we should have made the decay curvature much longer on this 808. But we have an 808 that sounds like an 808. So let's record this in. I guess we already did record it. Let's go to Edison. And I like the last one. So let's highlight this, drag it back inside of the Edison tab to focus only on that slice. Take the left side. You want to make Edison bigger and truncate the side so that we have 0 gap in the beginning of the 808, because that will mess people's playing up. And here's our 808. Now, again, it could be way, way longer, but we messed up the actual length. So let's truncate the end here. That is a funny shape, but much better 808. Again, we could run this back through our compressor if we wanted to. Let me see. How can we do this? Let's add another Edison after Edison and record into this Edison with the same chain just to see what it sounds like. All right, so let's take off the clipper. And we need to take off the output volume from here. I forgot we turned that up. Go back to the first one. So I'm just trying to add that transient. So we could reshape the curvature. I don't think it needs a transient. It's just a boxy sound in general. So it just has that like sound to it. Now let's figure out how to take this 808 and give it a sustain. So what you want to do is use this loop mode here. And it will loop the sound. Now we can go to the regions tab and set a loop. Okay, so we want to change our magnet here to 0 crossings. This will find a node where there is no amplitude. This is important for loops because if you have the beginning at 0 and the end at plus 0.6, it will keep clicking over and over again. So our goal now is just hit loop, and this shouldn't have any clicks in it. Better, but it could be better. And we try to avoid the volume because remember 808 goes down in volume. So we're trying to find an area that keeps consistent volume without too much harmonics going on. So I think this is like the perfect loop here. Let's just not overdo it. And now what we want to do is save this as a sample. I'll just show you guys how to drag it inside the channel rack for now. Let's drag this in the channel rack, and now it will have a loop bar around it. So for people to use it, they have to turn on loop mode. And then when they play the notes, it will loop the 808. So personally, I don't like the harmonics of this 808. I would go back and change stuff, but we've already kind of committed to the sound. And I think also Edison is playing, so maybe that's what we're hearing. So let's go back here. All right, and then you guys can mess with the pre-computed effects. And also you want to make sure we cut itself. So make sure you right click, go to cut itself, because sometimes when we pull from the Edison, it doesn't do that. And you could also mess with the fade out for different styles of 808s. Now again, not the greatest 808 because we pushed it too hard through some of the saturation stages. For my taste, I would personally probably EQ this one a little bit more for this sound. Again, we could be here all day trying to process an 808, but it goes back to the source. We have to go back to the source part of the sound. Personally, I like the 808s a little more dull like this. Now let's say you guys want to add like an extra little touch to it. We can add Decapitator. This is a great plugin. Just with it on, it just does something to the width of the 808. I don't know what it does. It makes 808 sound much bigger. And then let's add something like micro shift to widen the 808. And this is how you get that decap type of sound. We're going to lower the decay curvature, lower the detune. And this is basically like a chorus plugin, just faster. And we could change the actual area where it detunes so that we don't get too much phase issues with the bass. So let's push this a little harder through Decapitator. And pull back the mix level. can also cut the highs here so that we're not hearing too much upper harmonics, similar to the drive feature inside of Serum. So now I'm pushing Decapitator. We really don't have to push Decapitator this hard. But these are the final touches I would add to the 808. And I might even add the soft clipper back on here to try to reshape some of the... There we go. So see how much processing goes into one 808? It's a lot of steps. Now, one more step I might add is this plugin called Spectre to boost up some of the fundamental frequencies around 60 hertz. So let's boost somewhere around here. And we have to watch our levels here, so let's turn down the output. To me, it's not really adding anything, so let's add Spectre after. Not really hearing much change here. We could also switch the style, but I like the normal 60 hertz. So I don't know exactly where this 808 hits. This note hits around, what is this, like 40 hertz? So we need to go up. There we go. So let's boost. So if we did sample this in middle C, I'd definitely do it in this octave. Because that gets us closer to 60 hertz. Let me see where we're at. But we're not exactly at 60, but it doesn't really matter. All right, so that's what I would do, and then we could mess with the output level. And for a final touch, I might run it through a limiter just to shape some of the harmonics here again. Let's do like an aggressive limiter. I want to see if I can get a sound out of this. With a fast attack, fast release. Tricky part is the limiter has no output, so we got to turn this down. All right, so now I'm going to push into the limiter purposely aggressively. See if we can shape some of this tone. I guess this limiter is so clean of a limiter, it's not really doing much. But it does add like a polish to where it kind of holds the note instead of letting it fade so fast. So this is definitely the note I would sample. So let's, if we're going to do middle C sampling, let's open up Edison. So see how much processing goes into an 808. And let's hold the 808 for long so that we don't have to do all that other stuff we did before. Let's drag this, truncate the beginning here. And then we're going to leave it as a long 808. Now we can technically fade it, but I just want to keep it like this. And we're going to save this in the channel rack here. And now people have an 808 sample. Now, also too, when they play it, they can use the truncated version using the hold parameter. Now I didn't set a loop point for this because it's a long sample. So this 808 versus, this is also a nice kick to sample too. Really good kick actually. Let's sample this. All right, so we got a kick and an 808. All right, those are different tones of the kick. So let's save this project here. You guys look at these project files for free because we've been doing this video for what, an hour? So it took an hour to get like one kick and one 808. But the good thing is when you learn this process, you could just start here and then edit little things over time. So you don't have to keep doing every single step. But this is showing you guys how much detail goes into this stuff when you truly sound design from scratch. You know, a lot of people just kind of just take sounds and edit them, which has its merit. But when you're really sound designing from scratch, there's a real process to it. So let me find out where we started. I think we started with, that's the test 808. So let's find our 808 I think it was this one. And let's turn off the effects. So here's where we started. This is the starting point of the 808 we just designed. Here's where it started. now here's where it ended. So that's why I said sound design can shape the results. I think a lot of people give up because it doesn't sound the way it sounds right away. So I want you guys to learn more mixing techniques, because mixing is basically sound design, as you guys saw. That is free little mini masterclass on how to sound design 808s and kicks inside of FL Studio. If you guys want to learn more sound design, like how to create your own drum kits from scratch, snares, claps, hi-hats, kicks, go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. Look for our sound design course, because we have a whole sound design course. All right, y'all. Peace.